Forever Young Radio. I am Raleigh Culp, as usual. With our internet service. So
today is Veterans Day, celebrated on Friday.
Correct.
Right? And it's also the birthday of the Marine Corps, United States Marine Corps.
There you go. So happy birthday to the Marine Corps. And thank you for all your service to those who served and gone before and made it possible to live in this amazing country that we live in.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So here we go. We got a really cool show today, Bob. We found a neat article, and it's talking about the idea of super agers, right? Yeah. Super agers, how they live longer, how they think stronger, and why they enjoy life more is what we're going to be talking about. Now, what's a super ager? A super ager is someone who's 80 years or older and exhibits an exceptional memory, even, on the par of someone who's 25 to 30 years younger than they are. And we have a super ager that works with us. Actually, two, I want to say.
Yeah.
We got Jim Lee. So if you've ever gotten a phone call from Jim Lee asking how you're doing with your products, he's super ager number one. And then we have Gene, the dancing machine. He's, 87 this year? 86 this year.
Same with Jim.
Yep.
They're both closer to 90 than they are 80.
Let's say it that way. There you go. That's a good way to say it. But we have an example of super agers that work with us. And if you really ever want to talk to them, I'll put the number up right now. 1-800-861-4609. Give them a call. Talk to them. Ask what their secrets are, because we're going to go over some of the secrets of how to be a super ager and enjoy a very clear memory and brain for till you're in your 90s, at least, even longer. Mm-hmm. So anyway, let's get to it.
So one of the things we had found, Raleigh, was this article by a geriatrician from Northwestern University, a Dr. Lindquist.
That's correct.
And Dr. Lindquist is a board-certified geriatrician, which means he's a medical doctor that specializes in the care of older people.
Mm-hmm. You used to work in a retirement home, is that correct?
Yes. As a matter of fact, there was a geriatrician that I knew who sat on the board of directors of that corporation. Mm-hmm. And he was the author of the Encyclopedia of Geriatric Medicine. It was like a 13-volume set.
So you knew the source.
Yeah. And he chaired our quality assurance committee of the nursing home. And so every month we would meet and review everything that had happened over the past month, review projects we were working on for improvement in quality. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Gambert, Stephen Gambert, mm-hmm. who's the author of the encyclopedia, would sit with us and give us advice and help us and educate the staff. Some of the doctors that worked there were not board-certified geriatrician, but internists. Mm-hmm. So he would work with them. He would work with the nursing staff and all the other clinical staff to help them to make continuous and never-ending improvement, so to speak.
Yeah, there's always room for continued quality improvement.
So Dr. Lindquist is such a medical doctor, mm-hmm. and he wrote this article about the habits of super agers.
Yes, the super agers that we are so trying to figure the puzzle out about.
Yeah,
right.
And so he identified through reviewing research as part of his life's work. He identified 4 habits mm-hmm. that super agers tended to exhibit, and one of them was activity, meaning physical activity. And there's studies that show what happens to people's chances of getting memory loss, dementia, specifically Alzheimer's disease, related to their body mass index and their level of activity.
Okay.
And so he was saying that from the research, people that are very active are about a third as likely to get Alzheimer's disease as people who are not.
Okay.
So a direct correlation.
So I would assume that has a lot to do with the ability for the increased blood flow and oxygen, right? Because if you're not moving, your blood's not moving, and you're not circulating the oxygen that the brain needs, the nutrients that the brain needs, and the blood flow that's obviously required for the brain. So obviously activity is great in all cases, especially for brain health. Number one, okay, active.
Yeah, and also being active really ramps up the production of energy in your mitochondria.
ATP.
Yeah, and so your brain has mitochondria in the cells as well.
Okay.
And so you need activity to kind of keep your mitochondria moving in shape, create an expectation as to how much energy is needed
to go. And also it helps you maintain a healthy weight.
Yes.
You want to have a healthy weight, so that's a big reason.
The second one was that super agers are constantly challenging themselves.
Yep.
So you have an example of William Shatner.
Yes, I do.
What was it that was his
So I have a quote.
Key?
Hold on. Yeah, I had to pull these because these were great, guys. Give me one. Let me find it here. William Shatner. So William Shatner, actor, author, astronaut at age 90, right? Yeah. His secret weapon, he says, for being a super ager is his passion for the future, which I thought was very apropos considering he was on shows about living in the future. That's pretty cool. It says, my concern is about my children and grandchildren and the life they will lead. Given what we know is happening, traveling into space was a gigantic emotional experience. The truth of it is, I felt great grief as I realized how so many things are going extinct while you and I are talking. I saw the beauty of the world and the harshness of space and realized what we are doing to our Earth is so ugly. So he's passionate about the future of the planet, and that's what keeps him going. You know, I mean, if you look at the man, I saw him in a commercial. He looks like he's 75.
Yeah.
He's on this show. I forget it's called Unexplained or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You know,
he is.
You would never know.
And not everybody is an astronaut at age 90 and is doing that type of thing. But there are many people who are. We've interviewed for a podcast that we're going to release soon, a gentleman named Eric Curts.
Yes.
So we don't know what his age is, but he certainly is a super ager.
Absolutely.
And talk about an active mind. He's inventing new nutrition products.
Research-based breakthroughs. Yeah. This is what the guy does. He gets and he discovers a breakthrough, does all the research on it, and then figures out a way to make that research into something that can benefit. Right. Now, that's a challenge. Yeah. That's going to keep your brain working.
On it. He worked on this one project that we're aware of for 6 years.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing, but it's something that's challenging. Therefore, you have a brain that continues to work.
Yeah. Now,
love it.
For people who are not doing that level of research and with the William Shatners of the world, just keeping your mind active with studying new things, learning new things that you don't know much about.
Right.
And doing the New York Times crossword puzzle.
I was just going to say, I love a good crossword or even a regular puzzle, the jigsaw puzzle.
Keeping your mind active is extremely important.
And for anybody who's just joining, just to let you know what we're talking about super agers, which are people who are in their 80s who have exceptional memories, the things that they do and the differences that allow them to live longer, think stronger, and enjoy life more. So that's what we're doing. We did. There's the first two things, just to review it, was being active. Being active is key, right? Stay moving. Number two, continue to challenge yourselves even as you get older. Don't become complacent. Don't get stuck in, we call it default mode.
Yeah.
Right? Get out of default mode, challenge yourself. What's the third one?
The third one is what Dr. Lindquist calls being a social butterfly.
Now, my wife is that.
Yeah. So a social butterfly, meaning somebody who's constantly engaged with other people, meeting new people and working with new people. And what they found is that people who spend more time socializing actually have more of a specific type of brain cell, a neuron, that they refer to as spindle cells.
Yes, spindle cells.
And they are these specialized long cells. A very small percentage of the cells in your brain are actually spindle cells. There's I think they say 300 billion neurons in your brain, and about 200,000 of them are spindle cells.
Right.
So it's a very small percentage, but they play a significant role. They're specialized cells that are only in specific types of living things.
Interesting.
So human beings being one, elephants, dolphins, certain types of of gorillas and apes and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Right. And the rest of the animal kingdom do not have spindle cells, and they're associated with awareness, being aware that you're a human being and aware of your surroundings
and other people,
aware of other people, and also this sense of communication with other people as a source of life's enjoyment. And also there's a high emotional connection also with spindle cells that are interfacing with the amygdala, etc.
They also tend to call these specific brain cells or types of brain cells social intelligence cells.
Yeah.
That's what it's saying here. So when they refer to that as a social intelligence cell, you can obviously understand why someone who is a superager would be more willing to have new experiences, take on new challenges, right? They have that more of these spindle cells than an average person.
Yes.
That's an advantage.
That's associated with longer life.
Yes.
And that's quite a bit more. So one of the things, Raleigh, that I think is an issue in society in general is some people are comfortable with and good at socializing, and other people are not. They might have social anxiety. They might avoid going to group events because they are not quite sure the best way to communicate. And one of the best things people can do to increase that, and perhaps as a result increase their number of spindle cells through neurogenesis, is to learn NVC, nonviolent communication, or compassionate communication.
Yeah, we actually have a whole podcast I actually just put up on the screen at boomerboost.com. You can just visit there, and if you search up nonviolent communication in the search bar, it'll bring you right to the blog. Yeah. We did, it's actually a podcast with a blog attached.
Yeah.
Check that out. It's really good, especially around the holidays. You're going to need to be able to non-violently communicate. Yeah. So go check that out if you get a chance.
So there's another one, Raleigh, number 4, that Dr. Lindquist said he researched and discovered, is that superagers indulge, but they do it in moderation or balance.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that also relates to the previous one about being social. Yeah. So he's saying that particularly with drinking alcohol, the social butterflies will be okay with having one drink in a social setting, but they don't overdo it.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom, one of the things my mom always said was, moderation in all things. You can try a drink, but don't go overboard, and that's a pretty simple rule to live by. I mean, it's not easy for everyone, but if you can tend to follow that, it'll definitely help for multiple reasons. You talk about alcohol, that's one thing, but sugar intake, right? Fatty foods, different other things that can become habitual, gambling, that's one.
So processed foods. Processed foods more than the fatty foods. Some people do well eating a lot of fatty foods as long as it's the good fats. The trans fats is what will tend to age your brain.
Correct.
But Raleigh, also there was an issue with gratitude. There was one of the superagers that mentioned that. Do you remember which one that was?
So there's a superager that their actual secret weapon was, let me find it. Where did it go? It was very interesting.
I think it was one of the first ones.
Yes, Norman Lear. This guy's still alive. Norman Lear, the award-winning television producer and screenwriter, All in the Family, One Day at a Time. His secret weapon is gratitude, which we talk about on the show all the time. Gratitude attitude. I can only attribute being a super ager to what is known in common parlance as the luck of the draw. I would add one factor only, and that is gratitude. The hour by hour feeling of appreciation for the gifts with which we are born or have had the ability to accumulate. That is probably one of the best definitions of gratitude I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Literally. I don't think we've ever described it as that, but that's the type of knowledge you get from somebody he's 101 years old.
Yeah.
And he's still going. So
incredible.
That's amazing.
Well, we know that the gratitude is the opposite, in a sense, of the idea that things are not okay.
Correct.
And we know that when you're stuck in default of things are not okay, you end up producing a lot of stress hormones.
Yes.
Which we
Cortisol.
know ages you faster.
Yes.
And so the focus on gratitude begins to change the rut that you might get into of things are not okay, and helps you to reframe that. And that then changes your hormones so that you can actually live longer.
Yeah. And when we talk about, so these are basically the habits, we would say, that the super agers tend to follow and have in common. But there's actually a couple super things physiologically that they have that's a little different. One being the spindle cells that we were talking about. But there's also a few others that I wanted to just real quick go over. First one is that super agers' brains are shrink resistant, meaning they tend to shrink a lot less. And I have a little, let me pull this image up here. I have a little image I wanted to share with you that I found. It shows, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is right there. It shows the brains of a 64-year-old average person's brain. Here it is. So you've got to, let me turn this off so everybody can see it real quick. Boom. All right. So at the top here, you've got a 64-year-old cognitively normal brain, right? Down here, if you look at this brain, it's got not as many red spots. Those red spots are the areas that when you look at an 84-year-old cognitively normal brain, those red spots are much larger. That's the shrinking of the brain. You can see this is much more, full brain at 64. The average 84-year-old is right here. Now, let me remove all this stuff so you can see it. And this right here is the brain of an 85-year-old super ager, which almost looks, if you look at it compared to the 64-year-old, it almost looks in better shape, as if it has not shrunk as much as someone who's 64. So these are brain scans that were done on these type of people. And so their ability to kind of resist this encephalopathy of the brain, the shrinking of the brain, gives them kind of an advantage, right? The areas that are associated with memory and focus in particular are the ones that don't shrink as much.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Another thing that they have in their toolkit that many don't is they have memory cells that are supersized. So not only do they have these spindle social brain cells, social intelligence cells, but they have these supersized regular memory cells. So that's probably what Albert Einstein had, is one of these giant memory cells that also help them, the neurons, to work better, right? So that's there you go. So those are two additional things. Yeah, two additional things that they have an advantage on.
So here's another one that they did not talk about in these studies, but we know from other research, is a chemical compound called oxytocin, which is present in your brain. It's also present in your heart. And it's the molecule of loving kindness and compassion.
There you go.
And it's also the molecule women make in large amounts during childbirth.
Yes.
And so my guess is that people that are social butterflies, that are skilled at communicating in a way that makes others feel good and makes themselves feel good, probably have more oxytocin as a result than people who don't.
That makes sense.
Now, there are ways to make more oxytocin. One is to focus on what you're grateful for, especially in regard to people and little children. You'll produce more oxytocin. There's also a bacteria that helps raise your level of oxytocin, and some people use it as a way to change their personality. And it is Lactobacillus reuteri.
Okay.
And you can buy that right on Amazon and take the pills, and your oxytocin goes up. And a common thing that women will say when their husbands take it is, wow, my husband's become so much more kind and loving.
Interesting.
It also helps with muscle building.
Okay. There you go.
So this is something that is good to pay attention to. The other aspect, Raleigh, that we need to talk about a little more is circulation. So we know that superagers have better circulation than other people, and there are a lot of issues around that. We've done a whole podcast on circulation also, where people can learn about the biochemistry of circulation, can learn about the electromagnetic field issues related to circulation.
Absolutely.
And also, issues with sunlight and all like that.
Yeah, so, that's at boomerboost.com. Again, I put it up on the screen. You can actually just search circulation, and you'll be able to find the podcast we did on the importance of circulation.
Another really big one is antioxidants.
Yep.
So ultimately, people are producing a lot of free radicals. Free radicals are a double-edged sword. They are damaging your tissue on the bad side, but on the good side, they're actually act as cell signaling types of compounds that actually help your immune system. And so, again, you have to have a balance, because you have this electron transport chain where you produce ATP and donates electrons, and then another compound will come and steal an electron, create a free radical. Another compound that's an antioxidant will come and neutralize the free radical. And another will donate an electron to help with a positive metabolic pathway, leaving behind a free radical. And so there's this constant flux and balance. Some people have too many free radicals, not enough free radical scavengers, and they age faster. There's lots of things that can make it so that you are out of balance. But regardless of the reason, you can ingest antioxidants that can bring you back into balance. So just as you can make more oxytocin with Lactobacillus reuteri, you can balance your free radicals with superoxide dismutase, trimethylglycine, proanthocyanins, glutathione, the ACE vitamins, selenium, zinc, etc. And all of those compounds are in the Boomer products that people can use.
Right. That was actually going to bring me to kind of the next thing that superagers take advantage of is their lifestyle, the way they eat, right? Physically and intellectually active, using things that can actually replenish the nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, and in general, like with a Mediterranean style diet, eating in that vein, right? And then being able to have the components needed to reduce inflammation and things like that. So lifestyle, paying attention to that, moderation in all indulgences, having a healthy social life, willingness, like we were talking about, to challenge themselves and continue to move forward. And in the long run, making sure you're eating healthy. And then that way you can neutralize things like inflammation with antioxidants, the nutrients you need to rebuild and replenish muscles, all very important. So something that we talk about all the time, but when you look at a group of people like superagers and you see how they're able to continue for a longer period of time with more of their faculties and in better health, it's because one of their factors is a good lifestyle. So let's keep that in mind, man.
Raleigh, before we end, you had an example of Dr. Ruth.
Yes.
Who it is?
Okay, so everybody remembers Dr. Ruth, the sex doctor, right? So she's 95, right? And here's her quote, her secret weapon for being a superager. A love of life and talking, obviously. She's had lots of shows, lots of talk shows, and lots of books that she's written, so I can tell those are her secret weapons. Now, she says this: when I was 10 years old, my family made the sacrifice of sending me to Switzerland. That's how she survived the Holocaust. For 6 years, I was in an orphanage in Switzerland, hoping that my parents could get out. They did not. But my love for life and my attitude towards life is because of those early years. Also, I exercise, and I exercise my mouth. I talk day and night. It exercises my brain.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
That's really great.
Dr. Ruth.
That's really great. Well, Raleigh, it's been great. I'm glad we came across all of those testimonials, so to speak, and also Dr. Lindquist, the geriatrician.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the coolest things is that, like I said, we work with true super agers. And I've always asked myself, man, how do these guys do this? Well, they got big brain cells, spindle cells everywhere, and they're living a healthy life. So the secret is half of the secret is something we can all do. Live life happy, socially, eat well, don't indulge, but not too much. We can control that. We can't control having more spindle cells or bigger brain cells or whatever. But if we do the actions, the body will be in the shape it needs to be to continue there, even if you don't have bigger brain cells, right?
Well, if you do the crossword puzzles, and become an astronaut at age 90,
then you can do anything.
Those brain cells will probably grow.
Awesome. Well, this was great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on Live Forever Young Radio. We will see you next Thursday.